Welcome back, everybody, to Week 5 Risen Divine League, Conviction versus Omega Gaming Silence. We are now in Game 2 after a convincing game from Omega Gaming Silence in Game 1. I'm Gordo, joined once again by Rudude.
Yeah, looking into game number 2 right here, Gordo, we've got some very similar bans coming out from game number 1, the Lucian and the Hecarim once again taken away by Silence, the Morgana taken away from Banjito by Conviction, and the Duncan Darius Master himself is not going to get his hands on that champion as that gets banned away once again.
Do you think Duncan Dumplin is a Darius reference in there? It could be,
I think so.
but it certainly makes sense. But looking at these bans, the bans from Conviction are one of the things that I thought would probably change over from Game 1 to Game 2. It was Tarek Morgana Elise last time. We'll see that third ban is going to switch over to Graves. We'll see if we can see an Elise pick from Omega Gaming this game, or if maybe they've just stepped up their bans a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they were the team that obviously played the Graves that time, so they're expecting it to be, the B1 pick if Silence were going to take the Graves. Gets banned away though, so as you mentioned, does leave the Elise open here. We'll have to see if Silence are going to go for it. Elise hasn't seen a lot of play for a long time, and Italy really has filled the role that Elise used to, and you can see it there, the B1 Italy being picked up by Silence.
Yeah, that's going to be another Nidalee game for the side of Banky Kang. He performed pretty well on it in game one. Was able to respond to everything that was going on. Was able to get himself snowballing in ahead. Was able to secure objectives. We'll see what Conviction's response is and what from the side of Strixer they think they can bring out to beat this Nidalee, because the Graves was not the answer and it's no longer an option. It's going to be the Lilia.
Yeah, so another very staple meta pick right now, another AP jungler going to come through. Both very strong clearing junglers and also have a small, a nice amount of gank potential if they are using their kits effectively. Lilia, very strong at just running into a lane at full speed if she's off the back of a clear. Nidalee has the ability to gap close very easily as well with that pounce in the Cougar form. Ezreal, though, picked up safe blind pick as an ADC, probably the best that you can get. Not quite the Caitlyn or the Ashe that we saw from game number 1, and obviously with neither of them being banned away, it is going to be a deviation from what we saw there. And Silence here, Azuto, going to be quite happy to pick up this Caitlyn if he's able to pick it up once again.
Yeah, and it's going to be locked in once again. The bot lane of Omega Gaming Silence was something we highlighted last game as a really strong point coming through for Azuto and Banjito. And they have the opportunity to pick a similar lane this time. Although the Ezreal is kind of a preemptive counter pick to the Blitzcrank, I doubt we'll see it again.
Exactly, the use of the Arcane Shift able to buffer out that Blitzcrank grab, meaning that Banjito likely not going to take it here. Instead, they're opting for a mid lane pick of their own. Going to go for the blind Syndra in the first rotation, making sure that it doesn't get banned away here. In second phase of banning, you can typically take away some staple blind pick mid laners, such as the Ori, such as the Syndra. Common red side bans, but picking it in the first phase means that it's going to be open for Mad Show.
Yeah, and this does throw down the gauntlet a little bit for Odin. A lot of the established counters for Syndra.
Ooh.
Okay, first of all, this Blitzcrank is very interesting. Blitzcrank is now a contested pick in this series, but also, if you don't play any of the strong assassin picks that counter Syndra, if you don't play like an Echo or a Silas or even a Fizz or something, then odds are you don't play a really effective counter to Syndra, and it's just going to be a very effective blind pick into your team.
Exactly, and the Blitzcrank pick is, if Syndra was throwing down the gauntlet, Blitzcrank does the exact same into the bot lane, right? This is going to be a really pivotal matchup once again, and we'll have to see what Banjito goes for the counter pick. The issue that I have with this Blitzcrank pick is that the ADC paired with it is nowhere near as lethal or deadly as what we saw in game number 1. Obviously, Caitlyn had a lot of trap follow-up, has the slow with the net as well as a sort of execute combo with the Pillover Peacemaker. Ezreal doesn't necessarily have that same level of kill threat, same level of lockup that the Caitlyn does. So, Conviction now really have to focus on drafting around this Blitzcrank if they want to succeed with it as well as Silence did in game number 1.
Yeah. Additionally, Banjito's Blitzcrank was a counter pick to a Ashe Swain bot lane that he had already seen in round one of picks and bans. But in this game, Giovanni's Blitzcrank is a blind pick. Giovanni's Blitzcrank does not know what support it's going into yet. So definitely going to be a little bit more counter opportunity here. Let's see what Banjito has in his pocket to pull out against this Blitzcrank. It's not going to be the Leona, as that's also banned.
No, exactly, and we'll have to see what it is. The Thresh still on the table for Banjito if he wants to take that. Not necessarily a counter pick to the Blitzcrank, but has a similar effect and also does fairly well into an Ezreal matchup. But the Koros topside silence PowerPoint of the Gangplank is not going to be allowed in game number 2 either. They get that banned away, they focused all of their resources into it in game number 1, and it still wasn't enough to keep him down for long enough to, allow a snowball of the Camille. Gangplank gets taken away here, and Conviction now have the choice of solo laners to pick up. They go for the Zoe into the Syndra.
Yeah, and that makes sense. That's a pick that like is functional into the Syndra at least. It's not a great matchup. You can predict where she's going to come out of that ultimate and try to line up Qs and stuns with it. It can be bursted out pretty easily, even while it's in the process of going through the ultimate. But it's something that can stay back and can wave clear and can still function in its preferred role even against a Syndra.
Exactly, and Conviction here, they've got themselves two different styles of composition so far being picked up. The Zoe Ezreal poke that they've drafted for themselves, and then on top of the Blitzcrank and the Lilia here, two different styles of composition to go for. The Lilia as well aiding the poke, but the Blitzcrank just sort of going to be dealt to do the finishing touches to all the damage they go for.
Yeah, and the Wukong is going to be a Nautilus, actually. This is a error in the pro draft. That's actually going to be a Nautilus pick. So you're going to assume that Nautilus is going to be Banjito's counter pick into the Blitzcrank. It's an effective one. You can, if he whiffs hook, you can reply with a hook of your own. The same vice versa is, of course, true for the Blitzcrank side of that matchup. But it's also just like a tanky pick. It's got a shield. It runs Aftershock. So if you get hooked in, you can kind of just put out some CC, become tanky, throw up the shield, and hopefully survive.
Yeah, and you can see Conviction drafted themselves this poke composition, and immediately Silence just respond with two tanks that are going to be more than happy to try and lap up that poke and just absorb the damage itself. The two frontliners being that Shen and the Nautilus coming through. Nautilus as well, one of those champions that, as you mentioned, builds the Aftershock, will go for the Gargoyle Stoneplate likely as his first item, so we'll have a lot of tankiness if he's able to get in and amongst the team fights. Conviction finishing off with the Volibear in the top lane. We've seen a big resurgence of Volibear as of the World's Patch. He's able to go very heavily in the top lane and trade very effectively versus pretty much everything here. So we should see some nice nice trading for Conviction up on the top side.
Yeah, for sure. And that last pick from Conviction is going to be the Volibear. Feels a little pinched with even in light of not too many top lane bans. The Volibear not considered especially effective into the Shen. It's generally considered an unfavorable matchup. But we'll see what he's able to do there. It is certainly intending to hopefully win that lane a little bit for them. And it's certainly going to be a role player, going to be kind of a strong frontline pick for this carry jungler in the Lilia.
Yeah, exactly. The Silent Squad don't have necessarily the best tank shred capability here on the Volibear. Caitlyn does do a nice portion of damage, similarly with the Syndra, but if you're using your cooldowns mainly on the Volibear, then, the Ezreal and the Zoe, they should be able to run pretty rampant in the backline, so there's a lot of potential for a Conviction team fight to go in their favour, provided, of course, they get the adequate poke down before the start of that team fight. So there's a lot of avenues for either team to take this game.
Yeah, for sure. And I really like the second phase response from Omega Gaming Silence. You already brought it up, but in response to all of these poke picks being brought out by Conviction, we see the Shen and we see the Nautilus. The Shen in particular, I think, is really effective against these kind of poke-based comps. If you get put to sleep by a Zoe, there's time to get a Shen ultimate on you before you get one shot. If you get put to sleep by the Lilia, the exact same thing is true. There's a lot of, if you get hooked by a Blitzcrank, of course, there'll be a lot of opportunities here where the Shen ultimate can be used defensively to save from some of those picks. Also going to be a lot of opportunities to use it aggressively with this Nidalee here and with the Nautilus to hopefully try to make some picks of their own.
Exactly. Silence have a couple of dive buddies for the Shen. You mentioned the Nidalee going on in. If they do land a spear, it's going to be very dangerous for the Nidalee to jump in on her own. Provided they have the Nautilus and the Shen backing up, we can definitely look to see some submarine combinations. Not necessarily the submarine, obviously Nidalee not invisible, but you can get a Shen in there very quickly with the long range dash that the Nidalee does have available too once that hunted passive has been procced.
Yeah, certainly the case. And on the side of conviction, they do have a lot of opportunities to be able to get some of these picks. It's while the lane opportunities like in straight 2v2s don't look too aggressive, they don't really need to be. The Lily is going to be a scaling jungler. He's just going to be looking to get as much farm as possible. They're hoping to play this out pretty safely, probably up until they can get some roams going, and then they're just going to be trying to pick people off, playing around those pockets of vision, operating in a very similar manner to how Omega Gaming Silence was last game.
Exactly, and that just comes with the Blitzcrank pick, right? It's something that we saw exhibited pretty well by Silence last game. All the teams locked in, and you can, finally see that it was a Nautilus, not a Wukong. We weren't lying to you in any way, not that we would be at all. But I really want to focus on this bot side matchup because, again, when you've got these two hook champions, the same sort of style that the Swain Blitzcrank from game one provided, it's very easy for one of these ADCs to start establishing themselves with a foothold in the game. And we saw it in game one with the Zuto's Caitlyn. He has his hands on it once again. With the Nautilus by his side, able to potentially punish this Ezreal, punish the Blitzcrank maybe. I can see this game being a very bot-centric game as we go in. And the Azuto difference really could be felt once again if he's not hooked by the Blitzcrank. The Blitzcrank providing a much harsher CC than the Swain was, but doesn't, as I mentioned, have the follow-up that the Ashe provided from game number one.
Yeah, and something that you always have to keep in mind with these hook champ versus hook champ matchups is that they do all, in a way, counter each other. Thresh is the worst, as the biggest victim of this, but they do all stun themselves when they go for the hook. So if you go for the first hook and you miss, you can always be punished by a hook from the other side. That's going to be true, I believe, from both sides of this matchup. If you whiff a hook on Nautilus or Blitzcrank, I believe either champion will have enough of a space to reply with a hook of their own during the time you're stunned in your ability cast. So potentially a reason for both sides to be playing this out a little bit more passively, not wanting to make the first move and be potentially punished.
Exactly, and it all depends on, minion placement and where the champions are relative to those minions. And if the Blitzcrank finds an angle to throw a hook from behind his own wave, then the Nautilus won't have any response. But the Nautilus definitely has the riskier throw, for me at least. If the Blitzcrank throws the hook and misses, then he doesn't get pulled into the wall himself. Banjito here needs to be careful because if he goes in, misses the initial dredge line on a champion, there's always that possibility that he, hits a minion or hits a wall, pulls himself towards it, and puts himself in some pretty grave danger as well.
Yeah. Now, this is a combo that I haven't gotten to see in a competitive setting yet. Do you have any strong opinions on double sleep comp with Lilia and Zoe? Is there any fancy shenanigans you can think of that can be pulled out there?
So the Swirl Seed is going to be quite a pivotal cooldown here. If they set up a siege and the Swirl Seed just hits, it's the same sort of thing as a Zoe, but they just have more utility to do it, right? Sleepy Trouble Bubble from one side, Swirl Seed rolling down a lane as well. If there's in a siege situation, which means that they need to get themselves an advantage, it's going to be quite dangerous for anybody to step up, as if one of those sleeps hit, you're going to have the Paddle Star coming through, you're going to then have the True Shot Barrage potentially layered on top of that, and if they're so far ahead that Blitzcrank can step up, that's just a free hook as well. So a lot of skill shots need to be dodged here by Silence.
Yeah, certainly going to enable them for some of those skill shots. Now, with about a minute to go, we are going to take a quick break while we get loaded into the game, get everything synchronized for you guys. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back in a couple of minutes, hopefully less of a delay than last time as we had a bit of a pause. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody, to Omega Gaming Silence versus Conviction Game 2. Omega Gaming Silence currently up 1-0 in this series, looking to close it out, take first place in this group, and guarantee themselves a spot in the playoffs. I'm Gordo, joined once again by Rudude for Game 2. Rudude, how's it going?
Going really well. I'm excited to see what this Blitzcrank pick brings for Conviction here. We need to see if Boss Giovanni can pilot it to the same effectiveness that Banjito did. The ward going to be cleared away, so 10 gold to both Lilia and Zoe in this instance. But obviously the level 1 invade not going to yield any kills. Nice little ward down from Banjito, does get cleared away, but obviously does spot out Boss Giovanni and the rest of the Conviction roster. So they're going to be quite happy to just walk it away.
Yeah, no, in Game 1, Conviction takes Azuto's Flash, and in Game 2, they take Banjito's Ward. So definitely going to be once again making some of the early game plays over on the side of Conviction. But other than that, both sides just going to be spread out, just going to be checking for anything. We can see that the side of Omega Gaming has gotten a ward over by the Wraiths on the other side. So we'll see if they're able to gain some information off that on where Striker is, and if Banky Kang can maybe make some plays on it as a result.
Yeah, Vision traded back and forth. Unfortunately, you know, for Conviction, they don't actually have the start path or the starting position of Banky Kang, but as soon as Banjito and Azuto walk out of this bot lane, they are going to figure it out pretty quickly that they're at least started on the top side, or at least had a leashless bot side clear. Gets taken away, and the thing with Lilia is you can very easily tell where she's going to start with that Raptor ward, because even if she doesn't necessarily start on the Raptors and starts on the red buff, you use the Raptors themselves. Oh, hook hits.
Oh, Azuto going to get hooked in right away. Not going to blow any summoners, but going to lose quite a bit of HP. Going to have to eat that potion and going to have to eat a biscuit right away as well.
Yeah, exactly. But level 2 is almost going to come through. Koros on the top
getting
side.
Engaged on here by Duncan Dumplin, but as I already said, this is not a very strong counter pick in this lane. Going to have to look out here from this Shen. Going to get the sword pulled through again. Now he's going to be very low. Going to have to throw down the storm to get the shield and stay alive, but Duncan Dumplin now in a very unfavorable spot in this lane as Koros looking to set up the freeze.
Exactly, 2 potions down as well. Koros has the wave in the exact position that he wants it to be in. And this Shen has sort of sorted himself out already very early on. Banjito roaming into the mid lane. Odin probably going to have to flash.
Yeah, it's going to be a stun followed up by a hook. It's going to blow the flash out of Odin, but they're going to land the sleep here. A lot of damage coming out of the Lilia Zoe combo as Mad Show Gap going to be forced back, but that's going to be a turret shot onto Strixer, as Strixer is also chunked incredibly low, going to have to back up.
Yeah, Banjito roaming up, forcing out his own summoner spells. Banky Kang's here though, forces the flash.
Banky Kang gonna blow the flash out of the Lilia as well. That's gonna be 2 flashes out of the side of Conviction versus just Banjito's.
Yeah, overall, the summoner advantage for Omega Gaming Silence here, and Banky Kang also going to be able to walk down, take that bot lane Scuttle Crab as well. Currently a camp ahead of the Lilia, and early on at least, the Nidalee really...
Look at this CS lead for Koros. Koros is like 2 waves up right now and still has a whole nother wave crashing in. He's so powerful right now as long as Strixer can't ruin this for him, as he's going to be trading onto Koros. Strixer going to come and try to make the difference in this lane, going to at least break the freeze, try to give Duncan Dumplin back into this lane. Yeah,
and it's a really big play from Strixer to go up there and pretty much free his top laner from an absolutely disastrous state of the wave. That reset means that he's able to go back, get his health, get his mana back, and pick up just something else to help him in the laning phase. It's going to be that Ruby Crystal. And the Spell Thief coming through for the Zoe, getting a nice little bit of damage down onto Mad Show with that stolen away Ignite. Or not even stolen, but just picked up.
Yeah, and going to be picking up a Hextech Proto Belt as well. Just a lot of poke damage that she's going to be able to exert on a Mad Show Gap. Does have a little bit of an advantage in that lane after Mad Show Gap lost so much HP off of the sleep into Lilia W combo, taking a lot of damage as they were able to sync up those abilities. That really makes me excited for some of the plays Conviction's going to look to make with these 2 picks going forward, as they did a very good job of synchronizing the Lilia W, the Watch Out Eep, along with the Paddle Star to try to maximize the amount of damage they can get off that sleep.
Exactly. Timing your abilities is something that is so important when working with sleeps. You know, so often you can see just low damage tanks trying to break the Zoe sleep, and now with Lilia as well. The similar situations do arise. But combining those two things together, Boss
Oh,
Giovanni.
that's going to be a flash hook on to Azudo. Azudo going to flash away immediately before he gets knocked up, but he's still taken so low. Strixer going to be so fast coming in here, but gets hooked back by Banjito. Great play by him to prevent his AD carry from going down, and it's going to be no kills in the bot lane.
Yeah, very well played by Banjito to get himself and his AD carry out scot-free. They do have to burn all of the summoner spells on the AD carry, so there is a repeat play available if Boss Giovanni is able to find the hook and find the angle. But overall, committing a lot of resources down in the bot side, not going to get themselves the kill. They do force the Caitlyn back before the BF comes through, which is a really important power break for a Caitlyn. If you get that BF on the first recall, you're sitting pretty, but Banky Kang in the jungle could be caught.
Banky Kang getting engaged on by Strixer here as they're going to trade back onto each other. The Lilia can be very effective in this 1v1 if he can get the stacks up and dodge the abilities. Odin also here going to be collapsing. Banky Kang going to be forced to flash, has the Ignite ticking down on him, and it's going to be a big TP coming in from Duncan Dumplin as he picks up first blood here and is going to be turning off the tower to dive on a Mad Show Gap. Getting the second kill here, 2 for 0 in favor of Conviction. They draw first blood.
Exactly, and the Stand United is irrelevant in that instance. The turret is providing 0 help with the Stormbringer, and the rest of Conviction are able to collapse and help out the invade. Going horribly wrong there for Banky Kang. Does get the Raptors, but at the cost of both himself and his mid laner's life. Macho now down a little bit of experience and down about a wave or so underneath the turret. That's going to be pretty big for the Zoe to enable this snowball as we get more and more into the mid-game.
Yeah, and that kill and assist on Duncan Dumplin is going to be so important, especially with the first blood giving the extra 100 gold there, because he was getting crushed in this top lane. The itemization difference was just starting to come through as Shen had gotten off his first recall, so being able to get off the teleport, get a good, you know, probably 600 or 550 gold in the bank off of just kill gold, going to be super important for him as he was already so behind and was facing quite the big item disparity if he hadn't gotten that little boost to get him through the Bammy Cinder.
Exactly, and with the TP, he does suffer a little bit of an XP difference, but he's going to be, you know, happy enough just to take that and just run with it, because I'll take a little bit of an XP lead on Koros over the, you know, massive item discrepancy that he would have been facing otherwise. So there's a lot of power.
Dumplin is actually up in gold now. He was like, you can look at the 20 CS gap, but he's up in gold off of those kills.
Exactly, and that is just the power of kills early on, right? That is, you know, what you want to look toward and how Conviction are playing through this early game.
Giovanni looking for another hook here, going to maybe settle for Banjito here, but actually going to go in onto Azudo. He knows he has no flash as Azudo is going to get blown up by official nukes. Meanwhile, Odin getting engaged onto the mid lane. He's going to go down as well, but Banjito now is left all alone, going to be picked up by Strixer here. As in top lane, they're fighting as well as Koros and Duncan Dumplin going in onto each other. Koros might have bitten off a little more than he can chew here as Duncan Dumplin flashes forward, uses his newfound gold lead, and gets a solo kill.
So 2 kills, overall 3 kills rather, for Conviction. With the double kill bot lane, they're able to translate both onto Banjito and Azuto. And that top lane disparity that you just talked about here, the TP paying its dividends as well. Solo kill for Duncan Dumplin. The Surge, the W pulling out and doing a lot of damage onto this Shen gives healing back. And in these extended trades, the Volley Bear really favourable for Conviction. Banky Kang going to get away.
Looking for Banky Kang here. Banky Kang going to pick up the red buff and looks to escape here. But this is definitely the difference we can note actually. Mad Show Gap maybe going to get a kick here onto Strixer, going to stun him, deal as much damage as he can with that Q. Just going to hold him here, trying not to let him escape, but he's going to flash away. Mad Show Gap actually didn't have the ultimate available there. That's my mistake.
Yeah, Lilia is a very speedy fawn. Is able to nimbly, I'll say, more so than anything else, get herself to safety with that phase rush and with the chilling smite as well. Flash, Nimbus Cloak, all of that good stuff he's able to pretty much get from the enemy red buffs back up to the wolves in the space of about 5 or 10 seconds. That being said, they do burn the flash of the Lilia, which reduces her engage potential quite substantially. You know, so many times the blooming blows can be channeled with the flash, and then you use the sleep and Azonya's effect to start off a team fight. That's not going to be available for the next 5 minutes or so. Boss Giovanni steps up.
Giovanni looking for another hook onto Azudo, but he manages to sidestep it.
And this Caitlyn still doesn't have the BF sword, whereas Nukes now has that Sheen, has that tier, the Ezreal, you know, power curve essentially, and with the Cull completing the perfect trifecta of early game items that an Ezreal wants. He has the power in the Sheen, scaling in the Cull, and it's going to be engaged top lane.
All in from Duncan Dumplins here as he runs in, just blows the Volibear ultimate to just force Koros back and off of this wave.
Yeah, so the ultimately used effectively for nothing right there. He gets a very small chunk onto the Shen, but other than that, nothing particularly garnered from that all-in effort. The taunt's still available, really just a bit of a question mark as to whether or not there was ever a kill threat there. Has the now level lead, so he's going to be feeling comfortable with it, but with no ult, he makes himself a bit more vulnerable.
Yeah, he's looking at the scoreboard. He's picked up a couple of kills. He's closed some of the CS gap. He's feeling himself a little bit. Duncan Dumplin knows that he's now the stronger champion in this lane, and he wants to try to flex that muscle a little bit however he can. Has recalled and completed the Sunfire Cape now. This is really a case where, on paper, the Shen is supposed to win this lane, but clearly the side of Conviction just values this pick for their team composition, and because of the comfort for Duncan Dumplin so highly, that it can make up that difference. And we see that change at every level of competition. Just the ability to make those changes and to just differ from the meta where necessary because you know what you and your team are capable of.
Exactly, couldn't have put it better myself right here. And we look across the Silence roster as who is going to try and take down this Volibear right now, who has 2 levels on Azuto, who's the lead damage source supposedly for Silence. The completed Sunfire Cape is a very big spike for the top lane, and Azuto still without even the Infinity Edge, without even the BF Sword, might recall and get it now, but he's not going to be able to cut through this Volibear for a very long time, so we need to look toward Banky Kang, toward Mad Show Gap, to be the tank killers. But when you think of Nidalee and Syndra, you want them to be the assassins, focusing down these targets in the backline. Nukes and Odin are going to be able to put out a consistent amount of damage with the poke that they provide, and if the 2 mages are focusing on this Volibear, they're not focusing on the backline members who can be poking for free.
Yeah, and if you've noticed that this game, it's now almost 12 minutes, and we haven't gotten to see a good play made off of the Shen ultimate yet. You really would expect with this pick from Koros that they're going to try to make some engages. They're going to try to use the Shen ultimate at level 6 for some really effective ganks and some really unexpected mismatches in the number of players, but just not going to be an option they were able to take advantage of there. As Banky Kang, once again, trying to go mid, but not able to make anything happen. As Blitzcrank's coming in, he's going to get a hook on a Mad Show Gap. He's going to be put to sleep almost immediately, going to use the cleanse. Now there's a TP coming in. This is going to be a big team fight in the mid lane as Koros has come in with the Shen ultimate. That's going to be a knockup on to Odin in the back line as Koros is getting engaged on. Duncan Dumplin is now here. He's getting the stun onto Koros. Going to be taking him down right away as Banky Kang goes and trades back for Strixer. It's a 4v4 now as Benjito and Mad Show Gap are falling back, trying to kite out this Volibear as Azuto goes forward, trying to deal as much damage as he can on this Caitlyn, getting more health with the Volibear ultimate, going to be shut down by Syndra. Now it's just going to be both parties exchanging skill shots in the mid lane. They're going to disengage this fight, but it's going to be a win for the side of Omega Gaming Silence.
Yeah, just about a 2-for-1 in favor of them, and the ultimate being held for a little bit too long for my liking from Duncan Dumplin. Banky Kang, though, playing that team fight superbly, hitting spear after spear, dives in, takes down Strixer, and gets himself out to safety as well. I'm going to call the Rift Herald down as a victory for taking the blue buff, but he played that team fight so perfectly to keep himself safe and cut down the Lilia. Really, this Nidalee pick, showing the comfort, showing what he's capable of, and that was some top-tier Nidalee gameplay. Azuto came in off the back of it, was able to pick up some damage, and
he blows the Rift Herald top because it was about to time out, but in reality, actually, Koros here, now going to be able to push that into top lane. Duncan Dumplin is the only one even remotely nearby. There's no teleport to go towards top lane. They're going to get some plates off this Herald, unless Duncan Dumplin can somehow manage to protect these minions. Meanwhile, the rest of his team is going bottom. They're contesting the Dragon, 320 gold over to Banky Kang off of those turret plates. This is such a great play out of Omega Gaming as they're engaging onto Boss Giovanni. He's going to trade back for Banjito. It's a 1-for-1, but they do have the advantage in numbers because Shen has teleport. Shen can come in here at any time. Look for him to be looking for a ward. Look for him to be looking for an angle where he can flank and win his team this fight as Odin gets knocked out by a big Nidalee spear, going to have to jump over the wall, but is going to be picked up by an excellent spear from Mad Show Gap. Now here's the teleport from Koros. They have a huge numbers advantage here now as they're going to try to take the Dragon.
Yeah, Banjito and Boss Giovanni fishing for hooks.
That's going to be a multi-man sleep. It's going to be Duncan Dumplin coming in, flashing out of the side, going on to Azuto, but Azuto flashes away onto the other side. He now has enough distance between himself and the enemy team to potentially carry this fight. Duncan Dumplin trying to get some kills back. He's going to trade back for one, but is going to be traded back onto by Banky Kang. Now Strixer dancing around the outside, trying to put out as much damage as possible. A huge hook from Boss Giovanni, going to pull Azuto in, but Azuto's just going to turn it. He's going to take down Strixer. He's going to survive with an inch of HP, and he's going to get away. Meanwhile, Banky Kang going in for a 1v1 with official nukes, as he's not going to quite get it. Banky Kang trying to trade back, going to be picked up by the static field from Boss Giovanni in a messy fight.
Yeah, very messy indeed. Kills going backwards and forwards, traded on carries, on supports, on pretty much everybody right there. And ultimately, this Drake is still alive. Strixer and Banky Kang both down, but Strixer has the reset first, has the death timer shorter because he died earlier on in the fight. The Infernal Drake is still alive, so I'd expect some action to come down pretty soon here. Important to note, though, that now we have some big items coming through on both sides here. The Zhonya's Hourglass finish for Banky Kang. That's 2 items on your Nidalee very early on. This Nidalee is a very daunting threat. And the fact that the shutdown gold went to Boss Giovanni is the one person that you really don't want it on if you are Conviction. That said, though, Sheen and Manimune for nukes have been picked up. Neither team particularly interested in this Infernal Drake at the moment, but now it looks like the rest of Silence, they're going to try and start walking towards it, as Strixer is focusing a little bit on his topside clear.
Yeah, no, and Azudo, we got to draw attention to how well he's been playing this series, taking every fight to the absolute limit, blowing his flash at the last possible moment to save himself from getting caught out, getting hooked in by the Blitzcrank, but being able to trade back, survive between lifesteal and masteries, and just barely get out with a sliver of HP is so important for the side of Omega Gaming Silence that their AD carry is performing like this right now.
Exactly, and if we take stock quickly of just the levels across the teams, it looks really like Silence is establishing themselves with a bit of a lead at the moment. Banky Kang is level 10 to the level 9 of Strixer, Nukes is the level 9, level 10 of Azuto, so, you know, 2 levels doesn't seem like a lot, but the base stats that are hidden in levels actually do present a lot of gold just hidden in terms of their power level. So look for, you know, just the armor base increase from Banky Kang, the HP increase, you know, all of this stuff contributes to the lead that Silence are trying to generate for themselves. Whilst we see 500 gold as the kill gold and as the gold lead, and that's likely going to sort of stabilize and become very similar as the 2 turrets fall on either side. The hidden gold in statistics is something that we can't generate.
What are the odds that both Rift Heralds in one game get placed down on the blue side blue buff jungle?
Exactly, and just to do the same thing as well. Chorus could be caught.
Where it ends up going in, Duncan Dumplin going to be fighting in onto Chorus here, going to be flanked around by Strixer as he tries to flash away, but is going to be immediately put to sleep, picked up by 3 people. That's going to be an easy kill for the side of Conviction.
Yeah, and there's no cross map to be had by Silence here. The Blitzcrank, Boss Giovanni defending the mid lane tier 1, but Nidalee Syndra unable to take that in response. But now
Moving
Banky
for
Kang...
play here with Banky Kang, but they see it. Odin has already put him to sleep, going to be landing a huge paddle star here, taking him down to half HP. The spear does not return. It's going to be Duncan Dumplin now here, looking for an engage, getting the stun out of Nidalee. Banky Kang is hugely caught out here, as is Mad Show Gap, who's gotten hooked on the other side. He's going to go down as well. This is a huge fight for Conviction. There's only 2 members left. Azudo, you can't carry this 1v5. He's going to try to get away with his E, but is going to be being continuously chunked out. Giovanni flashes forward, goes in on Banjito, but it's a Shen ultimate coming in onto Azudo. Azudo going to be, Koros, I'm sorry, going in forward, trying to stun up onto that Blitzcrank, but not going to be able to do so. Odin now gets hooked by a big hook from Banjito. Banjito going to be able to take him down. Banky Kang is disconnected and reconnected. We're all good. That's going to be a 1 fight for Conviction.
3 for 1 overall that they do take, and the big play really coming out. Once again, Boss Giovanni able to find Mad Show in the jungle. And Lilia gets 2 kills. Strixer doing a lot of work on this. Lilia has got the Mercury chest for himself, so he's feeling really safe versus the Syndra Nidalee combination and any stuns or CCs that come through from that duo. Unfortunately, you know, a couple of missed taunts there from Koros and a little bit of a... we'll not call it mispositioning, but defensive entrance of the Stand United from Azuto means that Koros isn't able to find the impact that we'd want from a Shen in that team fight. They do take down Odin off a really nice dredge line from Banjito. You mentioned it in draft at that portal jump. Whilst it's good to give you a little bit of mobility, does make your port back location very telegraphed. Now 3 members walking towards the top side. Koros engages on Duncan.
Koros looking to try to maybe get this kill here. Spear's going to be dodged out by Dumplin. You got to think that he's going to be able to walk back under this turret, but they're going to go for the dive here. No, they aren't. They're going to decide against it and pull out.
Yeah, as soon as the initial spear misses, Banky Kang doesn't have the follow-up damage to cut through this volley bear. 2 items already. Azuto could be caught.
But Giovanni looking for a potential hook here onto Azuto, going to just walk outside the range, but is going to get put to sleep there on the backside, actually. Is currently sleeping, going to have to flash away from the paddle star. Barely survives. Mad Show Gap now. Going to be looking for this pick onto the Lilia. Gets the stun off, but doesn't believe in his damage enough to be able to one-shot him. And you know what? I think he's right.
Yeah, exactly. The Syndra having to go for a defensive build here in the second item, looking towards that Banshees. And that's because of the amount of poke that comes through, and just this pick and this engage that Conviction have got really relies on landing a skill shot such as the bubble, such as the Swirl Seed or even the grab. If the Banshee's Veil is able to protect from one of those, then it's served its purpose. It's a wise second pickup, but it really does limit the Syndra's damage until we see 3 or 4 items coming through. You know, we want to see a Rabadon, see a Liandry, see a Void Staff. These big hard-hitting AP items coming through before the Syndra has that one-shot potential, because at this stage in the game, he's really throwing out CC and chip damage rather than that all-in assassin combo that Syndra can have.
Azuto really doing a lot of work to keep his team in the game here. He's, as the rest of his teammates are giving up a lot of deaths, he's still kept it to only 1 here, still representing on that 2-1-4 score line, still equal in CS with his lane opponent, and is still able to have so much influence on these team fights.
Exactly, and with the gold lead now substantially in favour of Conviction, they should have the run of this Drake, which is spawning in about 20 seconds here. You can see that mid lane priority is now going to be in favour of Conviction for the foreseeable few minutes of the game, and that's really where their composition excels. If they are able to set up a siege, they're able to throw out the paddle start, throw out the sleeps, throw out
Banjito
double.
on the face checks here as they're trying to get into the jungle here, getting around this dragon pit. Strix are going to land Swirl Seed onto a couple of targets. They've got to respect the sleep possibility coming from that Lilia E. They've got to be sure to dodge out these bowling balls as they come rolling through the river. This is where they're most dangerous with their infinite range.
Exactly, and if they're set up, they're in the position to do so. Drake has been started, the trap line been put down by Azuto, but it's not in the position they want it to be. 4k on the Drake. Let's see if Banky Kang goes in.
Potentially for a steal here from Banky Kang. Banky Kang lands the hook, but is going to get hooked in himself by Giovanni. Red team is slaying the dragon as Banjito's getting blown up right away. Banky Kang has the exhaust on him. It's going to be Azuto getting blown up by the Ezreal ultimate. They've already wiped the entire enemy team, as Syndra's going to fall as well. This is a huge team fight win for Conviction, 4-0, and the dragon.
Yeah, Chorus uses the Stand United, but it's not anywhere near enough shielding to keep anybody alive. 4 kills, the dragon, and everything that they could have wanted out of that fight goes in the favour of Conviction. They're now going to work towards this Baron with Ezreal with the Trinity Force and the Liandry's on the Lilia that will be coming through soon. They've got enough damage to take this down quite handily.
Yeah, absolutely. They're definitely going to be able to pick up this Baron here, and now that's going to be nearly a doubling of the lead that they've already managed to build here for Conviction. It looks like they're going to be able to continue to pull this lead ahead over the course of the game, and now they're in a position where they should be able to snowball this into a victory. There's definitely going to be some kind of massive comeback required from Omega Gaming at this point to try to come back through this 5k gold lead.
Exactly, this is where the composition for a Conviction wants to be. They want to be set up, throwing out skill shots left and right, putting people to sleep, and poking them away with this poke composition that they've drafted for themselves. The Swirl Seed, the Paddle Star, the Bubbles, the Ezreal True Shot Barrage, this is exactly what their composition was built to do. If they aren't able to siege well here, then there's something wrong fundamentally with how they're going to be playing it out, because this is what their comp was built for.
Yeah, just going to see both sides trying to reset here, and really we're going to have to see Omega Gang need to start looking for some interesting picks. They need to start finding angles with the Nautilus and the Nidalee. They need to start finding Shen ultimates to try to pick off a squishier member, because they are no longer going to be favored in these 5-on-5s, if they ever were to begin with. Just so much influence coming down from this Volibear and this Lilia, constant CC coming down. They haven't been able to dodge the Blitzcrank hooks. Nearly every fight getting started off with somebody getting hooked. Doesn't seem to be in the cards for them to win these fights.
No, exactly, and we're waiting on 2 items coming through for Silence before they can really start taking any fights confidently once again. Banky Kang working towards that Athenes to try and help his team out a little bit more. The Banshee's Veil still not finished for the Syndra here, so is still under a lot of threat if anything should happen around any fights, any team sieges coming through. And you can see, just look at all the poke that they don't even need to land, but because these are on such short cooldowns here, maybe 8 seconds before they can rethrow those sleeping cooldowns, Silence always need to be on their toes.
Yeah, absolutely, and just the Siege coming in with the 1-4 setup. They've got Koros farming out on the bot lane, and they've got Mad Show Gap farming out the top lane, trying to clear against this Volibear. But that leaves with only 3 in mid lane against Baron buff. They just cannot prevent the turrets from going down. They're going to lose the inner. They're going to try to make a stand here at the inhibitor turret as the rest of Conviction heads into their future.
Yeah, they're going to take down all of the inner turrets at this stage, and Koros on the back side of it is working his way through that bot lane tier 2 quite nice. He got it down to about half HP at the minute. Probably not going to be able to get the entirety of it before the Volibear and the Ezreal manage to work their way through. Might be eating my words though. 3 minions left to his name. Might be able to secure it. Going to get it and probably just taunt away here. 350 gold in his pocket. You know, a nice little trade back, and when you have the Baron giving up a turret, not necessarily what you want.
Chased here by this Volibear. Volibear running out pretty fast here with his Q. It's going to be Giovanni here looking for the knockup. Gets it. Prevents the blast cone escape, but it's just going to be a flash from Koros. But he's going to run into Lily here on the other side. Going to get put to sleep off of that Lilia damage. Going to get hit by the Eep. Meanwhile, Odin now going to try to land the follow-up sleep. Not quite able to do it, but it gets picked up actually by Koros as Koros still runs away, takes a little damage, wakes right back up, threatens Strixer, who's just going to walk away. It's going to be no kills.
Yeah, BankyKang waiting in that bush put Strixer a little bit under pressure right there. He had to be careful, manages to get himself to safety. Has those Mercury Treads, as I mentioned, so he's feeling a little bit safer when fighting this Nidalee, rather. But Koros gets himself away, so he gets the turret and gets to safety, and that is probably going to run out. That runs out the entire Baron cooldown. And Conviction get themselves 2 turrets, but they don't break the base open, which buys a lot of time for Silence to now reset and reevaluate how they take these fights. 30 seconds on the Cloud Dragon, and Silence don't need to fight for this one. Yes, they've got the 2 items coming through, the big tanks as well, starting to stabilize themselves with the Gargoyles now and the Adaptive Helm for the Shen. They don't necessarily have to fight for this one, because this is only Soul Point that they'll be acquiring and not necessarily the Soul itself on the side of Conviction. So I have to see if Silence just opts to wait for another 5 minutes, stall the game out a little bit longer, and wait for those items to come through that they need to start dealing the damage to this big Volibear as a tank front line.
Yeah, we'll see if Silence decides to fight for or donate away this 3rd Drake here. Definitely don't want to give them the free soul point, because you never know when you could just get 1 dragon stolen without really expecting it. But they might just be forced to take the extra couple minutes of scaling that giving it away will give them. You know, it at least guarantees that they can farm for a little bit longer without being forced into a team fight. Because this Baron going to be respawning in a minute 30, but is significantly more difficult to take. As that dragon does go down, it's going to be soul point for the side of Conviction in this game.
Oh.
Now Giovanni looking for a hook here, but it's going to be on Vangito, who's already throwing a hook of his own to land back onto him. Giovanni here is going to be the target, going to get stunned up, going to get chain CC'd, going to get taken down by Azudo. Now they're following more in on Duncan Dumplin, trying to finish him off. Azudo getting snared, getting damaged on, getting stunned, getting flashed on, getting taken down, as BankyKang is now getting the focus as well, as now Koros going to go down. BankyKang getting taken down by Odin. Mad Show Gap and Vangito, the last 2 alive. They're getting flanked by the Lilia. They're getting poked out by the Ezreal. They're going to get picked up here. Mad Show Gap going to get taken down by the Eep. Vangito now getting slowed down. The Lilia on the flank picks up the double kill for Strixer. That's going to be an ace for the side of Conviction, and you got to believe they're going to tie up this series and they're going to take us to game 3.
Yeah, they have the opportunity to do so. 12 seconds on Azuto, 15 onto BankyKang here. Could be close, could be tight, but they have the minion wave here. No Baron, but the inhibitor's going to fall, and now Azuto is respawning soon, but is he going to be able to 1v4 in his base?
Zudo, all of it is on your back here, but you're not going to be able to. You've got to think. Now this first turret's already fallen. The second turret's going down. Strixer flashing onto Azudo. Azudo managing to survive here, but it's an open Nexus just getting wailed on by 3 members. You don't think they're going to be able to pull it back. They do not. Conviction ties the series as we are going to game 3.
And that team fight on the top side started out well for Silence, but it was in a 4v5 scenario for the majority of it. The Lilia was so far away from the fight. As soon as the Lilia joined, it just got turned back on its head. Really nice Stormbringer as well from the Volibear means that he's able to turn the fight back on its head. Azuto really never stood a chance when fighting up against that big tanky front line. And once again, unfortunately, the Stanch United comes in and then the taunt whiffs, so they don't have that time to focus down the Volibear. And unfortunately, you know, the game pretty much decided by that team fight there. Obviously, they had a big lead going into it, did Conviction, but that could have been a turning point.
Yeah, and now I'm pretty excited for this game 3. This has been a very close series on both sides. The losing team in both games able to at least keep it competitive. And now we're going to see which one of these teams is going to take first in the group for the time being, and which team is going to guarantee themselves a slot in the playoffs. We're going to take a small break